Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right Show. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. Lots to cover today. Of course, election results and all of that. But I want to say something about Val Kilmer. Very sad news last night. Val Kilmer passed away, 65 years old. He had been sick for quite some time. And, I have a memory. I got to share this. And I've mentioned it before here on air, but one of the nicest things that producer Robbie has ever done for me in our years of friendship is to surprise me with a ticket to Val Kilmer's one-man play in Culver City. This was, 12 years ago in 2013. And so we go down there, Culver City. We drive up from Orange County, sit down in a small theater, Kirk Douglas Theater, and watched Val Kilmer transform himself into Samuel Clemens, a.k.a. Mark Twain. And it's just him. It was him on stage with minimal props. And you'd think you were in a theater with Twain, with Mark Twain, telling stories. And then if that wasn't incredible enough, the way the play ended was Val Kilmer on stage. The makeup artist comes out, sort of, kind of breaks the scene setting, and it get a makeup artist come and the girl begins to remove his costuming, right, his makeup. And as she is removing the makeup, Val Kilmer gradually, and it's synchronized with the makeup, begins to transform back into Val Kilmer. But it was gradual. It was step by step. It was the most incredible acting I have ever seen. Certainly the most incredible live performance I've ever seen. A lot of Hollywood actors, just so you know, even very famous award-winning Hollywood actors, would not do well on stage in a live play. They just don't, there's no outtakes. You don't get to redo anything. You don't get cue cards. You just got to get up there and perform. So Val Kilmer, rest in peace, an incredible actor. And everybody says, Batman and Top Gun and all these movies. For me, it will always be Val Kilmer as Mark Twain. And the incredible, incredible acting that I don't know if I'll ever witness again from anyone else in my lifetime. All right, friends, let's take a beat here and talk about last night. Obviously, disappointing news in Wisconsin on one hand, because the liberal judge won. So the court was 4-3. Now it will continue to be 4-3. But the bright side of it, the silver lining is that voter ID passed overwhelmingly. The same electorate that chose a liberal judge also chose voter ID. Now, what does this tell you? Because I think this is a really fascinating case study for how this is truly one of those 80-20 issues that Democrats are on the wrong side of. People think Democrats, Republicans, independents, conservatives, liberals overwhelmingly believe that you ought to be able, that you ought to identify yourself before you vote. And I think, principally, obviously, hallmark of democracy is if you believe in one person, one vote, you have to somehow, verify that and enforce it. And it is absurd, right? The idea that you vote without identifying yourself, that you don't have to prove your eligibility to vote, sort of negates all the other laws that we have in society, because now people are making decisions in our country, in our states, in our counties, in our cities, are making decisions about leadership who are not in their rights to do so. and begin, by the way, making changes to our democracy that were, are not appropriate. So, this to me, the takeaway here, and we've seen it in Nevada, we've seen it in other states, a very popular issue, voter IDs, and encouraging. So Trump and the Republicans need to stick to this, and I think, moving forward, Trump is going to condition aid, financial aid to California, for example, on some election reform. And this a lot of people are screaming about this, about how dare he? California's in need. They've burned, half of LA burned to the ground. They're, obviously billions shy in their budget, which is in large part due to the fact that they're giving away the store to every illegal alien in the state of California. But regardless, they're in need, and people are screaming that Trump, shouldn't be petty about tying aid to California to some conditions. And I'm this is going to be the most important and a place, I think, where Trump and the Republicans need to hold firm and hold the line. Because if we don't clean up the elections, the country is lost. And it's lost in one, because I'm convinced that one side knows how to cheat. And so I guess the only way to get around that then is to have Republicans cheat too, which I don't like. I'm a fair play, common sense guy. I believe that our democracy ought to work the way that our founders intended. And call me Pollyannish, call me idealistic, but that's how it should be. And it's simple for it to work this way. I make no bones about it. I'm a citizen in a country, in a different country, in addition to the U.S., and I have voted in the Czech Republic, and I voted in person. And I have to, in order to vote there, you got to show up at the precinct where you're registered in person. You have to bring your state ID. They look you up on the list, Sam Mirejovsky, boom, cross you off, hand you a ballot that is registered to your name, okay, and you vote. And if there's any fraud, it's traceable. All of it's auditable. It's just right there. It's much more difficult to monkey with an election like that. And incidentally, Robbie, I have a prediction about Europe. It's an aside. Remember how Europe now has really gone after conservatives through lawfare, much in the same way that the Democrats did Trump here in this country. They've taken their cues, in other words, from the Biden administration, from Merrick Garland. They figured out this is how we do it. We can't win these elections, so we're going to go after Marine Le Pen. We're going to go after the conservative party, the AfD in Germany. We're just going to disqualify some of their votes. We will use any means necessary to maintain power. And one of my predictions is these super secure European style elections that, the Democrats here in the U.S. have found their way to, to get around and do it, in a very funny way. I think the Europeans are going to start to get loosey-goosey with their ID requirements in order to, as another part of their efforts to stay in power. We have to absolutely stop this. So it's encouraging, of course, in Wisconsin that this is changing. Now, let's talk about Florida here, just sort of big picture. 2 districts, Florida's 1st and 6th congressional districts. These are the seats that were vacated by Matt Gaetz and, of course, Mr. Waltz, who is the national security advisor, mired in scandal over his use of the Signal app. And inviting that pesky journalist onto the chat. Okay. Notice, by the way, how that story is dead. Side note. It's completely dead. And you know why? Because Trump shrugged it off, moved on, everybody moved on, and it just did not get traction because Republicans held firm in the end. Very pleased about that. So people are saying, look at these 2 races. Independents were lost. Independents, right-leaning independents didn't show up to vote. They didn't show up the way that they showed up for Trump. And one of the most common laments right now is it turns out that if you're a Republican and your name isn't Donald J. Trump, you're not, it's not going to be good. And they're saying, that basically 2026 is in jeopardy. That 2026 is at risk, meaning the midterms. So after the break, I want to answer that. I want to tell you how we win in 2026. It's very important. Is it doable? Yes. Is it going to require confronting some hard truths within the Republican Party? Yes, as well. So let's do it. Let's buckle up. Let's figure this out. I'm an optimist. I don't see this as being all that bad of news. And of course, we're going to get to Spartacus, a.k.a. Cory Booker, getting all sorts of bizarro accolades for his 24-hour filibuster on the floor of the Senate. Some weird crap that was, right, Robbie? All right, friends. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. This program brought to you today by Sam and Ash Injury Law, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. My email, sam@whatsrightshow.com. And of course, on X, formerly known as Twitter, you can see me, find me, follow me at What's Right Sam. The elections yesterday, just a couple of interesting statistics here. So Wisconsin, I mentioned the voter ID issue. That was issue 1, ballot initiative there. It won 63-37. So a significant majority, in other words. And yes, I know sometimes I say 80-20 issues. I mean, I'll tell you, some are 70-30, 60-40. Doesn't matter. This is a big majority of Wisconsin voters are supportive of this. So it is now part of the Wisconsin state constitution. Big deal. Now, the Supreme Court loss, a lot of money flowed into this race. But Susan Crawford, the Democrat, beat Brad Schimmel, the Republican, 55-45. The same electorate that wanted voter ID voted for Crawford over Schimmel. And look, I mean, it's people reading into this, all sorts of things. But one thing we looked up here and found that the Wisconsin 2023 special election for the Supreme Court, where a Democrat bested a Republican, had nearly identical results, 55%-44%. So is this Trump wasn't president. Biden was already unpopular. But it was just a different time. It's, 2 years in the past. So I wouldn't take the Wisconsin Supreme Court loss as some kind of an indicator on Trump. And when we look at, by the way, there was the Republican obviously spent a lot more money with Elon Musk's backing and other Republicans weighing in on the race and helping with it. The Republican outspent the Democrat significantly. The same is true in Florida's 6th and 1st congressional districts, where the Democrats both lost, and the Democrats had the fundraising advantage. Significant. What is interesting right now, and this is where I want to go with this, in light of the 2026 midterms, which this is all sort of being used to forecast how that will go. big money has lost pretty much every single election recently. Harris raised $1.2 billion and, typical for a Democrat, spent $1.3 billion. And Donald Trump raised $450 million and only spent $430. That's huge. Josh Weil, the Democrat in Florida's 6th, raised over $9 million, and Fine had less than $1 million. And Petronas, the Republican who beat Gay Valmont 57-42 in Matt Gaetz's district, the Democrat raised $6.5 million and Petronas only $2.1. Just to give you an idea, the midterms will not be about big money. The midterms will be entirely all about getting voters out. Who can get voters out? So there are two things that do this. Number one, I'm convinced, emphatically telling you that the candidate matters. It depends on who you run. Why did Petronas do better than Fine? Well, they didn't do fine. They did the same, but it was just in raw votes. Fine. Look, and by the way, the guy that was running, Schimmel, was not particularly popular, and it wasn't until the very last minute that Republicans hit the ground there. You have to have good candidates, or, and this is very important, you have to tie the local candidate to some sort of greater national campaign. This is, all Newt Gingrich's contract with America. We'll talk more about that. The other thing that matters is the on-ground organization. Now, Republicans, for the first time in the history of time, have figured this out. Democrats have always been very good at doing all the motor voter stuff, getting out there, getting in the community, going door to door, mobilizing forces. Here in Nevada, the reason that Democrats built such a significant political machine, not just due to Harry Reid, but because of the Culinary Union. The culinarists, as I like to call them, they are great at bringing in votes. They mobilize. They go into the community. They go door to door. And Republicans have started to do this, right? Charlie Kirk, but I think really significantly Scott Pressler, who did actually go to Wisconsin, did get Republicans out to come in. But the critical thing in all three races here is that Republicans did not vote early the way that they should have. Remember that one a couple weeks ago state Senate seat in Pennsylvania? The Republican lost it by 480 votes. It was a close race. You know how many Republicans sat it out? It reminds me of 2020 when Republicans sat at home, didn't vote. Trump lost Nevada. Okay. I mean, just in raw numbers, there were 3x, 4x Republican registered voters than what we needed to win. And then, of course, we talked endlessly about how the other side cheated, which I'm not here to say that they didn't. I'm just saying it excuses bad behavior on the part of Republicans, and bad behavior being Republicans not showing up on Election Day. The number one thing for the midterms, they are winnable. But Trump has to, as the leader of the party, because it's not going to come from that weenie who is the Speaker of the House. Mike Johnson's not going to cut it. It's going to have to come from Trump and some of Trump's, top people to nationalize the midterms as a Republican endorsement and an independent endorsement over the simple fact, are you better off today than you were 2 years ago? That has to be the centerpiece of the campaign. And if you want the forward progress that we've made to get slowed, to get stopped, to get resisted in Congress, then by all means stay home. Because that is exactly what's going to happen. The 24 hours of Cory Booker gives us some insight into what the Democrats are thinking. Speaking of, I'll talk about that next. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right Show brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. Hi, welcome to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Happy Wednesday, folks. My email's sam@whatsrightshow.com. sam@whatsrightshow.com. Email me with comments, questions, concerns, and of course, you can find me also on X. Download the free app. You can go online, certainly use your browser, create an account. It's free and it supports Elon Musk. Do it. Do it today if you haven't already. Sign up, create an account, be anonymous, doesn't matter. Easy peasy. But be sure you follow at What's Right Sam. Now, Cory Booker, New Jersey senator, he set a record yesterday for the longest Senate speech, exceeded 25 hours, and it was a long rant about Trump and all the things that Democrats need to do. And I listened to some of it. I didn't obviously have time to listen to 25 hours of Democrat gibberish, but it just seemed to me, at least, like a stunt. Now the question is, does this translate into any political capital, either for Cory Booker personally or for the Democrats? Now, I think for Cory Booker, it was a net positive thing, right? He's now become a little bit of a celebrity. He's raised his profile. And remember, Democrats right now, political elected Democrats with track records and ability to raise money, they're all jockeying for, pole position here on 2028. They're all considering their run for president. That's what this is all about, in sum and total. All right. So the person who was not most unenthused about Cory Booker's speech and stunt yesterday, for example, would be Gavin Newsom, who I think is the front runner. Okay. So now the next question is, does this help the Democrat brand? I don't think so at all. Again, to me, it's stunty. I think you can't just motivate people to vote based on hate. People voted for Trump and not for Kamala Harris because they wanted change in the country. The wrong direction numbers for months and months and months and months, years in fact, were abysmal. Abysmal. And this is important because right track numbers for Trump right now are solid. 2026 and 2028, the midterms and the next presidential election, will depend very heavily on whether the Trump experiment succeeds or fails. Now, I happen to believe, because I know that deregulation and a pro-business, environment, almost with certainty creates economic growth. And we were in such a, basically a state-run economy under Biden that there's no place to go but up. The pain is going to be felt now. We are in a period of turmoil. We're going to put these tariffs in. By the way, Canada already making noise about how we would take our tariffs to zero if America took it zero. So we're winning that fight. Okay. But I think in the long run, I think that people, when in 2 years, they look back to how it was in 2023 and 2024 before Trump became president, are going to say, yeah, we're better off. Okay. And an overwhelming number of people, they won't want to go back to Bidenomics. So what I didn't hear from Cory Booker is, how is Booker or the Democratic Party today, how are they different from Joe Biden? How are they different from Kamala Harris? Because the Democratic Party is going to need some kind of a big, redo, a rebranding, if you will. They're already, by the way, the Democratic Socialists of America are probably the most popular subgroup of the Democratic Party, right? They have the most loyal, fanatical people. This is the Luigi Mangione crowd. That's never going to win a general election. That's never going to, win a national race. Probably not even going to win a state race anywhere outside of Vermont. So that's a non-starter. I mean, what I wanted to hear, what would have absolutely terrified me, is for Cory Booker to articulate some kind of a vision for the Democratic Party that is separate from Trump, but still very appealing, and pushes back on the era of Biden, on the crazy, on the trans stuff, on the girls, getting, men in the locker room and playing on their teams, all the stuff, right? An overture to the middle, combined with some clear delineated differences, us versus Trump. And that simply didn't happen. In fact, you got weird stuff like this moment somewhere midway through the speech.
Call to the conscience of this nation to say, I will not stand for another American to lose their health care for a billionaire. I will not stand for another veteran who's dedicated to stopping the suicide of other veterans to lose their job. I won't stand for the air quality in my community to be made worse because they're letting polluters pollute more. I won't stand for the collective assaults on the Constitution by a man who even the highest judge in our land, a Republican-appointed judge, said, stop threatening and bullying other branches of government. When is it going to be enough? My voice is inadequate. My efforts today are inadequate to stop what they're trying to do. But we, the people, are powerful. We are strong. We have changed history. We have bent the arc of the moral universe. And now is that moral moment again. It's the moral moment again. God bless America. We need you now. God bless America. If you love her, if you love your neighbor, if you love this country, show your love. Stop them from doing what they're trying to do for almost 20 hours. We have laid out what they're trying to do, 20 hours. I want to stand more, and I will, but I'm begging people, don't let this be another normal day in America. Please, God, don't let them take Medicaid away from 10, 20, 30, or 40 million Americans who desperately need it. Don't let them do it.
It's all lies. He sounds, if he was a preacher talking about the Bible, this would be, not my thing personally. I enjoy a little bit of sobriety when it comes to religion, but I'm looking at this and I think the whole thing was sponsored by ketamine, right? It's just all so, hyperbolic and just filled with lies. All Trump and Elon Musk have to do, all the Republicans have to do is in 2 years and 4 years not have taken away Medicare. Not have taken away Social Security. It's just like the egg prices. This is how dumb Democrats are. They take the short-term emotional win in an argument. They do the lie, and then when it fizzles, they move on to something else. Egg price. What do I mean? Well, of course, for weeks and weeks of Trump's first, few weeks in office, look, egg prices are going. Egg prices are going. Yeah, because Biden killed all the chickens, freaking chicken murderer. So then the chickens come back because that's what happens, cycle of life, and it's a renewable resource, and all of a sudden egg prices drop, and the Democrats were like, oh, and Trump goes around going, look, I brought down egg prices, and Trump takes the win. It's like a setup. Trump's going to take away Medicare from 20, 30 million people. Look at it. For those of you listening and not watching, go then to the podcast. Go to Spotify, find What's Right Show so you can see this clip and like this bug eyes, right? This was not good. Now, I know I make fun of Frank Luntz. I know Frank Luntz. I think he's a very bright guy, but he is just such a rhino Republican goober. I have no words for this. This is Luntz's take on Cory Booker last night on the networks.
They're going crazy right now. And they're going crazy because they don't see leadership in their own party. And I want to emphasize what Cory Booker did over the last 24 hours may have changed the course of political history. I watched a lot of it. I listened to words. I listened to phrases, how he presents himself. Did he criticize Donald Trump? Of course he did. But he struck the kind of tone that grassroots Democrats are looking for. He gave them a reason to fight. He gave them a reason to stand up and say, this is my country too. Of course, every Republican watching will say, this is nonsense. But he's not speaking just to Republicans. He's speaking to Americans. And what I saw over the last 25 hours absolutely blew me away. And just as you sometimes make projections or predictions, I'm going to do one right here. That speech puts Cory Booker as one of the leaders for the Democratic Party, 2028, and I'll go even further. If you ask Democratic senators right now, would they rather have lead them over the next 3 years? They would choose Cory Booker over Chuck Schumer.
I hope that happens. Make Cory Booker the face of the Democratic Party. He's wild. By the way, he's not Obama. He's not a super smart guy, right? He's not. God, this is the best they've got. And by the way, let the Democrats fight internally over who's the biggest baddest top cat in town. Let them do that. But Luntz talking with these, and this is a guy who wrote a book on language and on the power of words. I watched a fair amount of this, did not see anything that was like, wow, persuasive. Got to take a quick break here. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. What's Right Show brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, the only law firm to trust for your injury needs. 702-820-1234. That's the number to call. Whether you're in California or Nevada, offices in both states, call the main number, and Sam and Ash will take care of you. All right, folks, be right back. Just a moment. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome to the What's Right Show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. All right, folks, Cory Booker. This is one giant vanity project, his 25-hour filibuster on the floor of the Senate. Booker here, by the way, it's back in 2018. I was mentioning this just before we went on break. His so-called Spartacus moment. This is Cory Booker. 2018 in September. He had just released confidential Senate Democrats, all in an effort to derail Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court. So it's an ugly moment indeed, and Booker made it all about himself. And this was the moment.
I could not understand, and I violated this rule knowingly, why these issues should be withheld from the public. Now, I appreciate the comments of my colleagues. This is about the closest I'll probably ever have in my life to an I am Spartacus moment.
He's a lightweight, guys. So if the Democratic Party right now is going to decide to dump, and Chuck Schumer, look, I'm not going to be here defending Chuck Schumer, but Chuck Schumer's a proven deal maker, a hard-nosed, smart politician who has slowly and methodically built himself up into being the most powerful Democrat on the Hill. yeah, he's a little over the hill. He's old, the same way with Nancy Pelosi. But sometimes you gotta appreciate the skills that your enemies have. All of my issues with Nancy Pelosi are ideological and ethical. But as far as her political talent, I mean, it's unmatched. So there it is. And so you're gonna get people saying that this was Booker's, moment. I don't know. I think all in all, it's a big nothing burger. Now, what is happening right now? I want to talk about tariffs really quickly. Because the tariff war is heating up. The market today reacting negatively to it. And what I've noticed with all of this happening is a lot of people don't quite understand how this is all going to play out. It is going to hurt them more than us. That's the long and the short of it. It hurts Canada more than it hurts the U.S. It hurts Mexico more than it hurts us. It'll hurt Europe more than it will hurt us. We are a large country. Even, having manufacturing be in its degraded state that it is, our country absolutely is capable of producing what it needs. We have resources here that we don't need to rely on, with some exception, but generally have the resources here to produce what we need, domestically without relying on external supply chain. So it's, we could, and we for these economies like Canada, like Mexico, we import from them more than we export to them. And their tariffs, some of which are in the hundreds of percent intended to protect their domestic product. I mean, it's literally designed to keep our products out of their countries. So how's this going to shake out? It's very simple. Okay, I mean, they're going to lose and they're going to fold. And this is why one of the most outspoken Canadian anti-Trump, stick it to the U.S., Canadian politicians, Doug Ford, who is the Ontario Prime Minister or Premier, changed his tune. And he went this morning on CNBC on the Squawk Box with Andrew Ross Sorkin and starts tough, but then very quickly shows that Canada is willing to fold.
Let's sit down and discuss this because it's just going to hurt American jobs. I can't stress it enough. And, again, he believes he's supporting Americans. He said he was going to create jobs, create wealth, reduce inflation. It's worked the total opposite. Inflation.
But do you think it's fair that you have tariffs on a whole number of products?
That's right. And we'd be willing to take those off tomorrow if he took all the tariffs off.
Whoa!
We are not the problem, Andrew. Do you know the problem is? China's the problem. And he's taking a blind eye to China as they continue to build their critical mineral mass. We have all the critical minerals that our great neighbors need. We have the energy that our great neighbors need.
I just want to go back for a moment. If, in fact, you're prepared to take your tariffs off, why wouldn't you have that negotiation and that conversation now before any tariffs get put in place?
Well, we've had this conversation for over the last month. We don't want tariffs. We have another $65 billion worth of tariffs to launch today. That's the last thing we want to do because it's just, again, it's going to hurt both countries. It's going to hurt American workers. That's the last thing I want.
Andrew meant take the other ones off, not the ones you're launching today. The ones that you already got.
You're saying you take all your tariffs off. I'm saying
we will take them off. That's right.
Then why is that not? I guess my question is, why has all of that not already happened? And does President Trump know that you'd be prepared to do that?
He knows, and Secretary Lutnick knows that we're willing to take these tariffs off, like in the next minute, if he said he's taking their tariffs off.
Okay. First of all, you have to understand what a pathetic country Canada is. I mean, this guy is one of the leading politicians in the country, and he's being talked about as prime minister, presidential material. So yeah, his position is something like a governor of a state, but it's a big state. Ontario is a big province in Canada, a complete and total buffoon. He knows that threatening additional 65 billion, whatever the number is, of tariffs on the U.S., that it is a fart in a stiff wind, that this is not going to achieve anything. And one thing that, again, they are signaling on television that they're willing to give up everything, all of their tariffs, all the ones that they've ever put on the U.S., all will go away. See how this sets up Trump for an easy win, right? Everybody talking about these tariffs are going to be ruinous and everything. Trump can win this easily. He just needs to extract the right price. Art of the deal. That's what this is. That's what's happening here behind the scenes. And I think the longer they let the Canadians sit in this and create problems for them domestically, then the better it'll be for the terms that the U.S. gets. All right, top of the hour here. Be back after the break. Don't go anywhere. Another hour of radio excellence after this short recess. Be right back, folks. Don't go anywhere. Hi, welcome to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., right here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. I am Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. Sam at whatsrightshow.com is my email. Email me with comments, concerns, questions. I do make every effort to respond to every email that I get, so I do look forward to hearing from you. And of course, on X, you can find me at What's Right Sam. All right. This is the season where students begin to get their acceptance and or rejection letters from great universities and some not so great universities. It's just that time of year for seniors in high school to start to find out what their plans next year are going to look like. And there's been an explosion of stories this year about unbelievably qualified students who are getting rejected from the top of top schools. Now, what does top of top mean? I think we are, it's my personal opinion here, I think we just have a very warped understanding of what makes a good school because it's ranked high, it has, a history along, an affiliation, Ivy League, for example. And I think some of these schools, from the students that I've met in my professional career, these schools no longer produce, high echelon professionals. They just don't, because they've become leftist indoctrination centers. They focus more on ideology than they do on preparing students to face real life. And they only trade on really prestige that is fading rapidly year over year. Schools like Columbia. What is Columbia synonymous with now after basically October 7th became a hotbed of pro-Palestinian, pro-terrorist, anti-Jewish propaganda and militant protest? It's not academic excellence that a school like Columbia is known for, right? Just Pavlovian response. You ring the Columbia bell and, the word association that comes to mind is, a terrorist deployment center, So my thoughts on this are quite simple. That the federal government of the United States be expected to subsidize schools like Columbia, schools like Harvard, schools like Princeton, and even Berkeley, right? Stanford now is devolving too in a very bad way, with some exceptions, right? Obviously, the Hoover Institute is there, but still, I mean, the stuff they teach there. These schools are teaching young people to hate this country. They are teaching them to be radical, gender ideologues, race ideologues, communists, and, you know, and by the way, you know, that time spent indoctrinating students is time not spent teaching them how to, you know, be successful humans. So why are we paying for this? Right? Why is your tax dollars, my tax dollars, why are they going to these schools? And Trump is asking the question because you have these schools that have, you know, billions of dollars in endowment, right? In invested funds that then sustain those universities in perpetuities, right? Think of these like trusts where there's a, you know, big donations are made to the school over the years. That money goes into an investment account, and even a very conservative, you know, approach to managing that investment spins off, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And the school has that money. In addition to that, they get government grants. And in addition to the government grants, there's the scam of what? Student loans. And student loans is the biggest, to me, the biggest, I mean, one of the biggest forms of government-sponsored welfare-free universities, because the government comes in and gives money to uncredit-worthy people, right? 17-year-olds, for example, to go get a degree that isn't worth the money it's printed on. And the only reason these students can go to these schools and pay $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, I think it is as high as $70,000 a year now, and not even for the top school, like a lot of universities are that much, is because the government is willing to foot the bill. If people had to pay for this directly, how many American families could afford $70K a year for 4 years to send little Junior off to a communist indoctrination camp? It wouldn't happen. It's only because the federal government comes in and underwrites this. Now, Republicans for generations have allowed this to happen. You have to back up here, and the person to read and to follow on this is Christopher Rufo. I think he articulates all of this very well. But to sum it up, Republicans, conservatives, have been non-interventionist when it comes to institutional infiltration. Our approach as conservatives, and this is, by the way, this is why we almost lost the country, as we've said, well, we're not going to take over a university. We're going to let ideas, you know, win, lose, whatever, in the open marketplace of thought. Very libertarian concept. Hands off, laissez-faire. It works in business. Generally speaking, more intervention in business is problematic. Less intervention stimulates the economy. But when it comes to institutions like universities, okay, like, I'm going to even say this, the CIA, for example, intelligence community, the government as a whole, okay? When you just go, well, we're just kind of hands off and do it our way, the radical left over the last 3-4 decades has come in and taken it all over. They run the universities. And what does that give them? Well, that gives them access to every generation of the best Americans, who then, when you go to Harvard, when you go to Columbia, when you go to Princeton, where do you end up? Big law, finance, government. You end up in all the positions of power around the country, and you've been indoctrinated from go by some of the most radical people on the planet. This has been the biggest mistake of conservatives in the last half century. And it needs to get corrected. And no conservative, no Republican elected at a national level, really with any amount of power, has had the balls to come in and say, nah, enough. And that's what Trump is doing. He's come in and said, enough, right? And that's why you're seeing stories like the Trump administration now reviewing the billions of dollars it gives to in federal funding to Harvard. Now, Harvard has a almost $52 billion endowment, billion with a B. And they charge $86,000 a year to go there. Why does a school like that, the question is, right, if it's so good, if the product, the service, the education is so premier, and they have, for every one spot, they've got 100 applications in theory, right? Why do they need any federal funding to begin with? It almost, to me now, seems that much like the USAID scandal, we're seeing what that money was used for. That money is used to coerce and help these universities. Coerce is maybe, they're very willing in this endeavor, but to make these universities become training centers for young liberals, leftists, agitators, in order to then perpetuate the political power of the Democratic Party. And the Republicans this whole time have been sitting on the sidelines. Oh, well, we can't take money away from school, learning, education, Department of Education. Look at the way the left has been screaming with Trump's quote unquote assault on the Department of ED. That's what we ought to call it. Intellectual, education dysfunction. Look, they're all foaming at the mouth. And is it really about school lunch for the poor kids in Mississippi? I'm not picking on Mississippi here. I'm just saying. It's not about that. It's never about what the Democrats are screaming about. It's about actually welfare for billionaires and these billion-dollar high ed endowments that are churning out reliable Democrats, reliable voters, reliable apparatchiks of the Democratic Party is getting funded by our government. It has to stop. It has to end. And now's the moment to do it. We don't have the money, right? We're running on fumes. We've got a $2 trillion deficit and rising. Doge is, of course, bringing that down. But why are we spending money on Harvard? Why are we doing this? And when I go back to these stories of these kids that are phenomenally qualified and they're not getting into Harvard and they're not getting into Yale, even though the Supreme Court has come down and said, hey, you can't discriminate based on race. I'm telling you that these schools are doing it anyway. It's happening. It's real. And here's the problem. These schools are violating the law. They are actually, in earnest, these are civil rights violations. And I'm gonna let you peek around a corner here. Today's stories, today's headlines are Trump cutting funding for X school. But the stories you're going to start to see within a year are Pam Bondi, Trump DOJ, files federal lawsuit, criminal lawsuit, civil rights lawsuit against Harvard, against Yale, against Stanford. And I'll tell you, these libs have been so stupid that they know what the law is and they openly conspire amongst themselves of how to break it. Because for them, gender ideology is everything. They could piss on the Constitution and on what is legal all day long, which is, by the way, you should never take serious any leftist that starts telling you about, but the Constitution, due process. Oh, so funny. They only discover the Constitution when it suits them. I'll give you real examples of this when we come back. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
The Sam & Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome back to the program. Sam@whatsrightshow.com is my email, at What's Right Sam on Twitter. So speaking of universities, let me give you an example. Admissions, right? The Supreme Court's come down and said schools cannot discriminate based on race. They can't give extra points to applicants based on race. They can't deduct points from applicants based on race. Yet there is a growing body of, circumstantial evidence, but evidence nonetheless, that very qualified people are being rejected from schools. Let me give you an example. There's a young man. He's 18 years old. His name is Zach Yadagari. He's a Jewish 18-year-old student. He is a CEO of an app that tracks your calories with just a picture of your food. He says his business is worth $30 million. Could very well be. He's 18. He has a 4.0 GPA and a 34 ACT, and he's already demonstrated that he's an entrepreneur, a businessman. Here is the schools he didn't get into. Are you ready? Stanford, MIT, Harvard, Yale, Washington U, Columbia, University of Pennsylvania, Princeton, Duke, USC, UVA, NYU, Vanderbilt, Brown, and Cornell. Where did he get in? It's interesting. Mostly Southern schools that are known to be more conservative. Georgia Tech, UT, and the University of Miami. Now, I think, I'm going to tell you, I am convinced, folks, that discrimination, race-based discrimination, affirmative action, whatever we would call it. I hate that word, by the way. Affirmative action makes it sound so nice, so positive. Affirmative action is institutionalized racism, plain and simple. And I'm convinced it's alive and well in our universities, and that it is simply being done surreptitiously. A couple years ago, back in the summer of 2023, Erwin Chemerinsky, who is lauded as being one of the top constitutional scholars of our country, so certainly not someone ignorant of the law, was busted on video taken by a student at Berkeley. Now, he was the dean of the University of Berkeley Law School, talking about doing something he called basically unstated affirmative action. Here's what it sounded like. And you just tell me if you think that these people are aware. When I talk about these people, I mean administrators, liberal leftists who run universities are aware that they're skirting the law.
What I mean by unstated affirmative action is, what if the college or university doesn't tell anybody, doesn't make any public statements, but still wants to? I'll give you an example from our law school, but if ever I'm deposed, I'm going to deny I said this to you. When we do faculty hiring, we're quite conscious that diversity is important to us. And we say diversity is important, it's fine to say that. But I'm very careful when we have a faculty appointments committee meeting. Anytime somebody says, we should really prefer this candidate over this candidate because this person would add diversity, don't say that. You can think it, you can vote it, but our discussions are not privileged, so don't ever articulate that that's what you're doing.
Oh, perfect. Now, I've played this clip before. I played it when it first came out. I thought it was epic news, and a sort of a smoking gun and something I suspected was happening. And I know Erwin Chemerinsky, and I know the fact that he thinks he can say this to a room full of students safely and not have it burn him shows the level of arrogance that the left has. And this is the arrogance. By the way, I'm going to be on with Riley Lewis on OAN later today, and one of the things we're going to talk about is, is sort of it comes back to this kind of arrogance of leftism. Pam Bondi and the likelihood that she succeeds in her prosecutions. And one of the reasons I think that the Trump administration, this Department of Justice is going to be kept very busy, is that for years and years and years, these crazy leftists have felt safe and have gotten lazy in hiding their trail to break the law. Because they've been untouchable. Because the political system under Democrats favors them, and Republicans, past administrations, have been too afraid to go after them either. Even Trump 1.0, Trump 45 was afraid to go after these people. So what happened? They went after Trump for 4 years, right? In post-presidency, literally wanted to jail him and confiscate his entire body of wealth. So Trump got pissed off, as one might, and bada boom, bada bang, now he's in the White House. It's his Department of Justice. You think he's going to sleep on this? You think Pam Bondi isn't going to go after each and every one of these miscreants? I mean, I would arrest Erwin Chemerinsky. What he is saying here is wink, wink. We're going to break the law. We are going to discriminate against students, against faculty members. We are going to be racist. And we're going to do it, by simply not admitting out loud that we're doing what we're doing. By the way, let me ask you a question, right? You don't have to be a legal eagle to figure this out. How do you think they went after Southern racists, right? In the civil rights era. You think they kept memorandums like the Nazis on their racism? No, you proved those cases by looking at the statistics and there being no other plausible explanation for why people were getting discriminated against except for their race. That's how that worked. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. Be right back after this. Folks, welcome to the What's Right show. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. Happy Wednesday. Good to be here with you. The What's Right show, of course, brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, the only law firm to trust for your personal injury case. Don't take the insurance company at its word. These are woke corporate monsters, okay? I'm a free market guy. I love free enterprise, but, this is like trusting Bud Light in your greatest time of need. Don't do it. Call Sam & Ash. Get a friendly voice on the phone. Get some help. Get some questions answered. Maybe you need a lawyer. Maybe you don't. But don't take the insurance company's word for anything. 702-820-1234. 702-820-1234. The only number to call after an accident. 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. Now, I mentioned just before the break, part of Trump's process here is going to be going after these universities, and you'll see that, big in the news right now, certain grants, okay? Certain grants are being taken away. Money's being halted. The Trump administration getting very muscular in its fight with these big schools. And the left is freaking out about it. And the left is freaking out because this is an enormous source of support for leftist causes that our tax dollars should not be going to support. I played the clip here of Erwin Chemerinsky, dean of Berkeley Law School 2 years ago, saying to students, telling students, we're not, there's been a Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court decision said that basically we can't discriminate based on race, but we're still going to wink, wink, nod, nod, do it. And he's like, if anybody ever deposes me, I'm going to deny I said this, but we still consider race. The same thing is happening with DEI. There was a big story in Daily Mail about a public school, the University of Michigan. They spent $250 million on DEI strategies, but they're now trying to get around the Trump ban by just renaming it. They're going to call it, wait for it, HOPE. I think it's the hub of opportunity, persistence, and excellence. But it's all the same, people working in it. It's all the same objectives. It's all the same nonsense. They just gave it a different word. Quote, we do not anticipate any reduction in staffing due to this change, but some staff positions will be retitled and job descriptions will be reviewed to ensure we achieve the breadth of access needed for our students. That's from the Chancellor of Michigan, Lawrence B. Alexander. Just like Chemerinsky on that tape, this guy is admitting in an open letter, we're not really changing anything. We're just renaming it. Back to me telling you, these people are so stupid. And they've gotten this way because the left has never had to watch their 6 o'clock. They've never had to look behind them and worry that anybody's going to come and prosecute them because they've been protected by every Department of Justice, whether Republican or Democrat, for the past 50 years. So I'm just telling you, to me, this is a huge story. Now, can I bring this closer to home? I've been thinking about this a lot. I think UNLV right here in Las Vegas, if you don't know this, by the way, UNLV went through a big thing a couple years ago, getting rid of Hey Reb, their mascot. This is, by the way, Harry Reid tried to make this an issue all the way back in 2015, but then the summer of George came, right? George Floyd. And everybody's talking about race, and the fanatics are running loose. And they basically got the acting president, her name was Martamina, they got her to dump Hey Reb, saying that he was somehow some kind of a Confederate symbol. And this was a complete joke because Reb was actually literally a rejection of the Confederacy. It's created by a local artist, Mike Miller. He's a cartoonish mountain man, is what he looked. Big mustache, he's on the license plates. You could get the Hey Reb. You can still see him around Las Vegas. And he was meant to evoke, Western, trailblazers of the early 19th century exploring Nevada. And fun fact, Miller sold the design to UNLV for $1. And it was, part of the university until 2021, when then President Keith Whitfield, I think he's still the president now, announced he would be retired. And this whole thing, yeah, Hey Reb was canceled by this wokeism, and woke is dead. And it's dead, particularly here in Nevada. This is so ridiculous. So I think we ought to bring him back, and I'm going to start pushing for this here on the show because, and by the way, if you agree with me, email me, let me know, sam@whatsrightshow.com, or if you disagree with me, email me too. But I'm done with this. I'm done with these pansy liberal left-wing educators, so-called educators. They're not. They're indoctrinators who are more concerned with ideology and political correctness than they are with producing students ready for the real world. So bring back Hey Reb. And by the way, I hope Pam Bondi goes after both Erwin Chemerinsky and the president, the Chancellor of Michigan, for their efforts to skirt federal law. Absolutely unacceptable. Crazy. We're going to take an early break. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, the What's Right Show, brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Hi, friends. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. One of the updates today is that a number of unidentified sources coming forward that Elon Musk's time at the White House at Doge, at least as a full-time special employee of the government, is coming to an end. I don't know. I think Trump hinted at this on Monday when he told reporters in the Oval Office that it's been amazing having him there, meaning Musk, but he's got a company to run, multiple companies to run. So some point he's going to go back. Remember, too, I mentioned that he's this special government employee. There are exemptions for 130-day periods, but that it eventually ends. So I know 130 days. I think that's, what are we, 40 odd days away from that. So I wouldn't be surprised if Musk does leave somewhere in that period of time. So again, but I'll tell you one thing that I see. When in that interview, all those smart people that are working at Doge, I mean, it's not like it's all Elon Musk, right? I mean, all of the people they're firing on all cylinders, and they're very bright. They're good communicators. They're able to explain what this is all about. So I don't think that Doge goes away, and I think Elon got it started, and we'll check in on it, and we'll serve as a consultant, and continue doing other great things. So I don't, in sum, I don't see this as being a major problem. The other story I wanted to cover just before we wrap up the show, of course, is this vote in the House yesterday over proxy voting for young mothers and fathers. Now, I am hugely sympathetic to Anna Paulina Luna. I mean, I think she's an absolute firecracker and MAGA through and through, and I love her stuff. I don't really have a criticism of her on this, except to say that for me personally, I just think in-person voting is hugely important. And if you open the door just a little crack and allow proxy voting, it all goes to hell. And the Constitution is very clear about it, about vote. Members of Congress need to be present, physically present for votes. And people have been, censured and punished by Congress over the years for, finding sneaky ways to having their votes put in when they're not in the chamber. And I think this is kind of a slap in the face to those in the past that have been punished for this. Now, the flip side of this is, of course, I'm all for you bringing your kid if you've got a young kid. I mean, allow the rules. This is not in the Constitution. This would not be a violation of anything. Hell, you've got Fetterman walking around in shorts and a hoodie. I mean, how bring a kid in. I mean, go in and vote. If you need to vote with your baby, bring your infant in arms, go in and vote, go back to your office. It's not like these congressmen have it so uncomfortable, okay? They've got offices. There are underground trains that go from the various office buildings to the Capitol. In the wintertime, they don't have to even go outside. So this is not an insurmountable obstacle. This is my view personally. If you've got a different opinion on this, very curious to hear from you. Sam@whatsrightshow.com. Okay. I want to say something here of one sort of last big point about universities. What do all these universities who are still hell bent on violating the law and being, I guess what we would call liberal left-wing resistors of Trumpism, what do they have in common with these liberal left-wing judges who are filing all these stays and legal impediments to Trump's executive orders and to his administration's policies? There's a common thread through this, and that is that these institutions, both the courts and universities, are slowly making themselves irrelevant. I've explained here about the courts, and every day that goes by. Today there was another story, another judge somewhere, putting his foot down and saying Trump can't do X, Y, and Z. Every time one of these unlawful stays come into place, these TROs are put in place. Every time it happens, the court's authority erodes. And I'm convinced that 4 years from now, the the power of the judicial branch of the federal government will be significantly diminished over where it was a year ago, for example. The same is happening year over year with these universities. Nothing has damaged the university's brand more than going full woke. It was bad enough with affirmative action. But in the last several years, the universities have gone to the even further left than they were before, and have so doubled down on being being ideological, protest centers, that a number of students are opting out. Something interesting is happening, and this may be, I don't know if Trump is doing this intentionally, but it bears saying that the universities that they have a choice, right? Columbia has a choice. You lose the money, or you do what Trump's telling you to do. And it's almost damned if you do, damned if you don't. The universities right now are losing. I know many people who write to me who say, look, my son, my grandson, child, daughter, granddaughter, looking to go to Columbia, they could have gotten in, they applied, they're pulling their applications, they're not going, they're not even sending in an application fee, not doing it. They're opting out. And then I'm reading stories that there are liberals opting out because the liberals feel that Columbia is kowtowing to Trump, believe it or not. And this is the problem, right? The minute that the university makes its bed in a political space, that's where they live. And they become damned if they do, damned. They become basically problematic no matter which direction they go. And ultimately, in order to comply with the law, Columbia is going to piss off everybody. It's not like it's going to bring conservatives back to Columbia. And the liberals are going to be furious that Columbia folded. And maybe this is why Trump is tackling these schools sort of one by one, right? If he was doing it all at once, they would be in the soup together. But by picking on one, and Columbia being most egregious because of just the violence and the anti-Semitism that they've allowed on their campus, discrimination against Jewish students and faculty, blocking Jewish students and faculty from the campus. I mean, you know the stories. So I think, folks, in the end, 10 years from now, will it be worth anyone's time to go to Columbia? Will it be the same? Will it have the same prestige that it did 5 years ago? Will, in the course of 15 years, a school like Columbia drop significantly in its value and its value proposition? My thinking is absolutely yes. Because on the backside of all of this drama is the AI revolution, is tech. Well, there's a coming disruption. I know some of you have heard me talk about this before. There is probably the most significant disruption to the job market coming since the Industrial Revolution. And we will get through it, but the 4-year school may not. I sit on the board of a university, of Chapman University in Orange, California, and I'm not going to describe exactly what goes on in our private closed-door meetings, but I know there's a lot of anxiety in higher education as to survivability. There will be schools that simply don't make it. There will be universities, particularly low-end universities, private schools that don't have state support, that are going to disappear in the next 5 years. Now, it's harder to disappear a school that has a $50 billion endowment like Harvard, right? It's just not going to happen overnight. But will it happen? Will the Harvard brand erode? Will the Columbia, Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Stanford brands erode? How many tech entrepreneurs like the one I described who built a $30 million company before he was even going to college, how many of those people do they need to reject, sacrifice at the altar of woke, race, and gender ideology before the school becomes just a proof that you somehow passed through a diversity filter, right? Oh, you went to Harvard. Oh, they thought you were diverse. And me, the employer who's reading that going, you're an idiot. Remember that girl I mentioned, the interview that I had here at the firm at Sam & Ash Injury Law, applied for a job. This gal was doing the entire interview using an AI chatbot. The AI program on her computer was listening to my questions and was feeding her answers, and I could tell what she was doing. I'll just come out and say it. She got a degree from USC. There you go. Went to USC, top school, quote unquote. And now I'm thinking, you know what? And by the way, she, is part of a minority group. I'll just say that too. So what do you have? Now, as an employer, every time I see a USC degree, I'm like, oh, yeah, they just bring in minorities and let them use chatbots because all they care about is diversity. The value of that degree on a resume, just for me and for everybody that I talk to, has eroded by some measurable percentage. This is fascinating, right? And I think it's going to be happening at scale, is my point. Liberals are like poison to everything that they touch. Socialists, communists, leftists, they destroy institutions. They have destroyed and are destroying the courts right now. They've destroyed universities. They destroyed the FBI, the CIA. They destroy everything that they come in contact with. And this is why the counter-revolution is so important. And back to elections. Republicans can win as long as they articulate the argument for why the counter-revolution is important and necessary for the survival of the republic. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right Show will be back tomorrow, Thursday. Don't despair, folks, and have a great day.